They boarded the ship like any other couple, gray-haired, kind-eyed, and seemingly ready for just a week of relaxation. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video. Ed and Mabel Lawrence were in their 70s, recently retired, and hoping to celebrate a lifetime of hard work with a cruise aboard the Ocean Serenity. But what began as a short escape from the real world quietly morphed into a bold and unbelievable adventure, one that would last not a few days, but a decade. At first, no one suspected a thing. The Lawrences played their roles perfectly. When the ship docked and the original cruise came to an end, they simply stayed aboard. They switched cabins. They mingled with new passengers. They dressed differently, sat in new areas, and altered their daily habits to avoid familiarity. What was supposed to be a week of rest turned into an elaborate life of stealth. Their method? Genius. They disembarked during port stops like everyone else, only to reboard without fanfare. They became invisible. Friendly, but not too friendly. Ed would ask tourists about their travels. Mabel would compliment dresses or recommend a dessert from the dining hall. They appeared like ordinary mid-voyage passengers. No one asked questions. No one looked too closely. And with every successful sail away, they carved out more time in their secret floating paradise. Weeks turned into months. Months blurred into years. Every few weeks they'd move cabins. A small act that confused the tracking system. Sometimes they booked upgrades. Sometimes they chose the smallest available rooms. It wasn't luxury they were chasing. It was freedom. Freedom from rent, bills, obligations. The cruise ship became their home, their city, their life. They rarely attended on-board events, avoiding attention from staff. Instead, they found quiet corners of the ship, a peaceful nook in the library, an overlooked cafe on Deck 5, a hidden bench by the stern where they'd sip tea under the stars. They weren't guests anymore. They were ghosts on the sea. But nothing stays hidden forever. It started with laundry. A young attendant noticed something strange. The same laundry, the same names, over and over, for months. She casually mentioned it to a colleague. Word spread. Whispers turned to curiosity. Waiters, bartenders, entertainers. They began noticing the same sweet couple popping up cruise after cruise, never leaving. Suspicion slowly bloomed. Behind the scenes, a quiet investigation began. Crew members double-checked manifests. Officers compared logs. And there, hidden in plain sight, was the truth. Ed and Mabel Lawrence had been on board for over 10 years, and had never once officially rebooked a trip. Eventually, the couple was called to the ship's office. The captain, with a mixture of amusement and disbelief, asked the question directly. "How long have you been with us?" Ed smiled. Mabel chuckled. "Long enough to call this home," Ed replied. They told their story with honesty and warmth. No crime committed, no harm done. They weren't freeloaders. They paid for food and services. They simply slipped through the cracks, living a life few could even dream of. The captain sat quietly, absorbing the truth. Ed and Mabel hadn't hurt anyone. In fact, they had become a part of the ship's unspoken charm, a mystery that now had a face, a name, and a remarkable story behind it. But despite the warmth of their tale, the captain had a duty. A loophole had been exploited, and they couldn't just remain on board forever. After a long pause, he made his decision. Ed and Mabel would be allowed to stay until the end of the current voyage. After that, however, they would have to disembark permanently. No scandal, no fuss, just a quiet farewell. The couple accepted the decision with grace. They had always known this life couldn't last forever, but now that the end was real, it felt like letting go of a dream. In the weeks that followed, they made the most of every moment. They strolled the decks at sunrise, watched the horizon with awe, and shared nostalgic meals at their favorite table by the window. They revisited every corner that had become part of their hidden life. The upper deck cafe where they once danced under the stars, the tucked-away theater booth where they whispered commentary during old musicals, the cabin where Mabel had once surprised Ed with a handmade anniversary dinner. And then the final morning came. No announcement, No fanfare, just Ed and Mabel, hand in hand, walking down the gangway for the last time. The ground beneath them felt unfamiliar, too solid, too still. After 10 years adrift, the noise and rush of land life felt overwhelming. Worse still, they had no home to return to. They had sold everything, believing their cruise would be short-lived. Now, in a world that had moved on without them, they had to start from scratch. Technology had leapt forward. Everyone was glued to phones. Payment apps, QR menus, digital everything. It all felt alien. They enrolled in workshops to catch up, but often left more confused than when they'd arrived. Friends had moved away, some had passed, and the connections they once had seemed faded. It was as if time had carried them away like the tide, and now it had washed them back onto a shoreline that no longer recognized them. And yet, the sea still called. 1 year after disembarking, Ed and Mabel booked a short cruise. The Ocean Serenity still sailed. Stepping onto its deck again was like seeing an old friend. The carpet underfoot, the scent of salt in the air, even the distant chime of the PA system, it all stirred something deep within them. They began sailing again, this time openly, with booked tickets and cruise IDs. They visited new destinations, met fellow travelers, and shared bits of their story, though never the whole tale. People laughed, teased them. Maybe I'll just hide in a lifeboat and stay like you two. They would chuckle politely, knowing just how much effort their secret life had really required. Years passed. The voyages became shorter, the days at sea more restful than adventurous. But even as age caught up with them, they refused to let go of the waves. Then came one final journey, a world cruise, sailing through all 7 continents. It was expensive, exhausting, and everything they had dreamed of. At every port they danced, dined, and smiled, soaking in the magic. On the final night, with the stars above and the ocean stretching endlessly around them, Ed and Mabel stood together on the stern, watching the horizon. No words, just gratitude. When they finally settled down, it was in a quiet coastal village where the sea was always within reach. A small cottage, a garden, wind chimes that sang with the breeze. It wasn't the Ocean Serenity, but it was close enough. Their story spread among cruise communities, whispered at dinner tables and retold at bars. Some thought it a myth. Others believed every word. Former crew members who had once served them came to visit, laughing over old memories and quiet close calls. To the world, Ed and Mabel were more than just travelers. They were legends. And in the quiet evenings, as they sat side by side watching the sunset, Mabel would sometimes lean close and whisper with a smile, "We really did it, didn't we?" Ed would squeeze her hand. "Yes," he'd say softly, "we lived the dream, and we never looked back."